Hello everyone. Here I present with you a little snippet of a recent class I taught with my current year training program on the essence of Chiron. I felt this teaching was really clear and it feels appropriate to share right now with Chiron just recently stationing retrograde. Check out the description to learn more about my sessions, my newsletter, my community membership, and to also learn more about my yearly training program as well as the self-study option. All right, enjoy this teaching.
A part of the Chiron journey is it's a function that reflects as this deep individuation, and that individuation is so different than the Uranus individuation. The Uranian individuation is freedom from conditioning itself. We're not freeing ourselves, which means like we're not looking on the outside to belong. We're not trying to fit into a group or a context. That's Uranus. Um, and also with Uranus, like we're in touch with this inherent individuality. It's like the awakening of our beingness, right? It doesn't fit into a box. Chiron is a very individuating aspect, but it doesn't occur through that liberation. It occurs through pain. It occurs through meeting one's unique condition, wherein that unique condition renders oneself as simply different. You can't function the way others do. You can't fit in or belong. And the answer isn't liberation. The answer is actually to yield to your unique condition and to do the work that you're here to do, to show up into the individuation occurs by way of embracing your life with your condition. And it's not a Saturn thing in the sense of Saturn's limits and boundaries and parameters. And so there are a lot of conditions with Saturn. Saturn says you can't just do whatever you want to do. You're learning how to be contained and responsible and disciplined. It's not that because it's not just about being contained and responsible and disciplined. And then the more you do it, the stronger you get, because that has a very strong, if I can just follow the rules and do it right, I will be successful. That's Saturn. The conditioning elements of Chiron are ones that come only through the initiation of self-knowledge, where there are limits to our reality, but we have to find those limits out by way of meeting our unique condition. And as we meet that unique condition, we are individuated because we find that we are something unique about ourselves. We can't free ourselves from that. So there's a pain in that. Very often, Chiron will show up as an actual impairment, like an actual, it could be a little physical impairment, or a non-physical hidden impairment of some kind. But you can't just pretend it's not there. And that's where we speak to the teachings of Chiron being we can get very identified with that sense of there's something just wrong with me. And then we're going to, in a Virgo kind of way, avoid doing our work, avoid filling our function. Or we can try to normalize and deny that there's something going on. And when we do that, that's when we will tend to create more wounding for ourselves and for others, because we're going to get involved in experience that we don't have the capacity to meet. Right? When we're not yielding to our own condition, which is another way of saying when we're not meeting the unique limits that come with our unique experience, then we're trying to normalize anyway, because to not normalize would be painful. So we're ignoring it and we're just proceeding. We're not going to be honest. We're not going to be truly present to what's actually going on the inside. And that's where we will hurt ourselves. And Jeff Green beautifully taught a uncommonly spoken facet of Chiron. It's where we will create wounding for others. And there's a lot of guilt in the Chiron archetype relative to that pattern of wounding. Oftentimes, the impairment itself is connected to that guilt. And so there's some area of life where, on our own journey, in some way, many souls will be carrying this guilt. And that guilt is going to often express in those two extremes. I don't want to have to deal with it, so I'm going to try to normalize, but we'll recreate conditions that will produce more guilt. Or it'll feel too uncomfortable and we won't want to fulfill our function, do our work. And there's a healing that happens in moving into that Chiron and finding our own way through it. And this is why compassion is a really, I mean, Chiron is such a fascinating archetype. If you think about it, it's not even like an asteroid, it's a comet. It's like one of many centaurs. It's a very small body, but this is the one that somehow made its way into the collective, right? It was like realized or discovered, I don't like discovered or it was noticed, right, in the 70s. So not that long ago. And it's really fascinating to consider what it means for a function to become awakened in the collective. And Chiron is, Neptune, of course, is about compassion, but there's something very unique with Chiron that speaks to the journey of compassion that comes through pain, that comes through one's vulnerability, that comes to the tenderness of meeting where one is wounded or broken in some way. And then that impairment, that sense of feeling wounded, it becomes medicine. And we can speak these words in not these like abstract conceptual ways, but in a really real way. Like that which has otherwise been a source of pain and alienation, when we embrace it, that is compassion. And then we do our work and we become compassionate beings because we're not operating in the psychology of avoidance and denial or in the I'm trying to normalize and avoid my pain. So there's a very um you've been through the ringer and it's been hard and you're showing up anyway, and that journey in the showing up, you have a humility which almost enforces that you don't create the same wounding that you've created in the past or recreate the same wounding experiences that you've had in the past. Because that compassion and that humility means we're not going to be running away from ourselves. So that is my reintroduction to Chiron that I felt to share. Shannon.
A couple questions. First, how do astrologers figure out what something is when it's discovered? Did they just like everyone madly plots it and just starts watching it? And I thought I heard you say Barbara Handcloud wrote the book on Chiron, so she must have just really dug into a bunch of charts and just watched it and looked at it.
Yeah, I mean, there's that method. That's the empirical scientific method, where it's like, okay, let's observe something over long periods of time and correlate it. And I'm sure, I mean, that of course, that's a part of it. But then there's the real answer, um, which is when something is ready to be awakened. There are those who will be called to bring forward that knowledge and that wisdom, and their own soul journey will be directing them towards that. So people like Barbara Hand Clow or Jeff Green with the Pluto material,
Okay.
he got it from Sri Yukteswar. I know Barbara Hand Clow was a very psychic individual. Um, so I think there's just a calling in this. It's the same way. It's like, how did the astronomers know to name it the right thing? It's
Right.
like it's a principle of synchronicity. Like you ask a question, you pull any random card, but that card is going to be the right one for you. So yeah, I think there's something quite profound around like the naming of these astrological bodies and their relevance in reality to our own soul journey, and the mythology and the archetypes are real. It takes correlation and observation. Like you have to be scientific about it to get, to really learn. But I think there can be a more intuitive psychic knowledge that just says this is what it's about.